I stood there in the middle of St. Mary's Church on the outskirts of Seattle, the place my father, Harold Bennett, had chosen to entrust the last remnants of his life. I am Lucas Bennett, 36 years old, a book editor who spends his days wrestling with dusty manuscripts and cold coffee in a cramped office. My father had just passed away from a sudden stroke so swift that no one had time to prepare. The doctor said it was common at 65, but to me it felt like a devastating blow, leaving behind a vast emptiness that I didn't yet know how to fill. The atmosphere of the funeral was heavy, like a fog enveloping everything. The church bells tolled mournfully, mingling with the whispers of the mourners. White lilies were piled high on the casket, their sweet fragrance cloying and oppressive. I wore the only black suit in my closet, standing beside my mother, my hand tightly clutching the hastily printed funeral program on thin paper. But I couldn't cry. Not a single tear fell. A feeling of emptiness spread through me as if someone had hollowed out a part of my heart. I went through the motions mechanically, shaking hands with strangers, nodding in thanks for their hollow condolences and trying to keep my face from twisting. "He was a wonderful father," someone said. I forced a stiff smile, but in my mind I thought, sure, but why do I feel like I never truly knew him? Friends, neighbors, and my father's old colleagues came one after another. They lined up in front of the casket, each sharing a story about Harold Bennett, the kind, responsible man they had known. Old Tom from the repair shop near our house recounted the time my father helped him fix his roof for free in the pouring rain. Harold was one of the rare good ones, you know, always ready to help without asking for anything in return. Mrs. Linda, the next-door neighbor, was teary-eyed. "He used to bring homemade bread to my house every Sunday morning. Such a kind man. Why did the Lord take him so soon?" Those words echoed in my head, forcing me to confront a harsh truth. Perhaps I had never fully understood my father's real life. I grew up with the image of a strict, quiet father, always busy with his mechanical engineering work. We rarely had deep conversations, just polite small talk over dinner. Now, hearing these stories, I wondered, how much of himself had my father hidden? Those warm smiles for strangers, those acts of kindness I had never witnessed, they all made me feel like a stranger in my own family. My mother, Margaret Bennett, stood silently throughout the service. She wore a simple black outfit, her silver hair neatly tied back, her face devoid of any emotional creases. She restrained everything perfectly, as if she had been preparing for this moment for a long time. No tears, no sobs, just a stone statue standing beside me. I glanced at her, searching for some sign, a trembling hand, reddened eyes, but there was nothing. She merely nodded to the visitors, murmuring thanks mechanically. I knew my mother was strong, but this silence unsettled me. She and my father had been together for over 40 years, through the hard times when he lost his job, through the nights I stayed up sick. How could she be so calm? Or was she hiding a pain deeper than I could imagine? The service dragged on endlessly. The priest read prayers, everyone sang hymns, and then the casket was lowered into the grave. I threw the first handful of dirt. The sound of it thudding against the coffin lid was like knocks from hell. People began to leave, making the church feel emptier than ever. Rain began to fall lightly outside the windows, blurring the stained glass. I stood there, watching the cars disappear into the distance, a wave of loneliness rising within me. Then, unexpectedly, a hand rested on my shoulder. I turned to see Arthur Miles, my father's longtime friend. He was around 60 with snow-white hair and deep-set eyes behind thick glasses. "Lucas, do you have a moment? We need to talk privately." My heart pounded. Arthur wasn't the type to waste words. We'd met a few times at family gatherings, but he always kept his distance, as if he knew some secret he didn't want to share. I nodded, and we went into the church's waiting room, a small, dimly lit space with old wooden chairs and a musty smell. He closed the door, locked it carefully, then sat down across from me. "Are you okay, Lucas?" he asked, his voice warm but laced with concern. I replied, my voice slightly trembling. "I think so. And you? You and my father were very close, weren't you?" He nodded, his gaze distant. Harold was my friend from college. We went through so much together. But today, I'm not just here to offer condolences. He asked me to do something for him. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old rusty key, a crumpled hand-drawn map, and a sealed envelope. My heart beat faster. These items looked like props from an old detective film. He placed them on the table and pushed them toward me. Harold left these for you. He instructed me to give them directly to you, and only you. I picked up the key, feeling the cold metal against my skin. It had an unusual shape, like a key for an antique lock. The map was on yellowed paper with shaky but clear hand-drawn lines leading from Seattle up into the mountains deep into the forest. And the envelope, plain white paper sealed with red wax, no writing on the outside. "What is this, Mr. Arthur?" I asked, my voice faltering with excitement. He sighed, looking at me intently. "I don't know the details, Lucas. Harold only said that you must go to the exact location marked on the map before opening the envelope. And most importantly, don't tell anyone, not even your mother." His words sent a chill down my spine. Not tell anyone, even my mother. As far as I knew, my father had never hidden anything from her. "Why is that, sir? Did my father have some secret?" Arthur shook his head and stood up. "That's all I know. Be careful, Lucas. Harold wasn't the type to joke around. If he left this for you, there's definitely a reason." He patted my shoulder and left, leaving me alone with the mysterious items. I spread out the map to examine it more closely. The marked spot was a small red dot deep in Olympic National Forest, a few hours' drive from Seattle. Completely unfamiliar. My father had never mentioned this place. He wasn't the camping or adventure type. He preferred staying home reading books or fixing things. Why a map leading into the forest? A feeling of confusion and unease rose like a tide, making it hard to breathe. What kind of legacy was this? Or was it one final prank from my father? I stuffed everything into my pocket and left the church. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through my suit and chilling me to the bone. At home, I gave my mother a brief greeting and went straight to my room. She looked at me strangely but didn't ask anything. Perhaps she was lost in her own grief. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Lying in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, the key, the map, and the envelope haunted my thoughts like ghosts. What secret had my father taken to his grave? An old debt? Or something darker? I pored over the map under the desk lamp, searching for clues. The hand-drawn lines, the handwriting was my father's, shaky but familiar. When had he drawn it? When he knew he was dying? The thought made me shudder. I imagined him sitting alone in the garage, drawing the map under dim light, knowing this was his final message to his son. Why hadn't he told me directly? Why all this mystery? The next morning I woke up earlier than usual, my mind still heavy from a sleepless night. My mother was downstairs in the kitchen, the familiar sizzle of eggs frying in the pan echoed through the house. But today it sounded distant, as if coming from another world. I greeted her with a hoarse voice. "I'll be home a bit late from work today, Mom." She nodded without asking anything, just looking at me with tired eyes. I felt guilty for hiding it from her, but Arthur's warning still echoed. "Do not reveal this to anyone, not even your mother." I stuffed the key, the map, and the envelope into my backpack, then drove away from Seattle. The sky was still dimly lit at dawn, fog blanketing the streets and making everything hazy, like a dream with no escape. The road was familiar at first, running along Interstate 15, passing through sparse residential areas. But following my father's hand-drawn directions, I turned onto a smaller road heading toward the Olympic Mountains. The farther I went, the more isolated it became. Oncoming cars grew rare, replaced by dense forests lining both sides of the road. My phone signal started weakening, the bars flickering before disappearing entirely. All around were towering trees, pine needles rustling in the wind, and thick fog like a curtain obscuring everything. My heart beat faster. This wasn't a casual outing. It was stepping into the unknown. a place where my father had hidden a part of his life I had never touched. I glanced at the map on the passenger seat, its scribbled lines leading me deeper into the forest. Why had my father chosen this place? An isolated cabin? Or just a retreat he had never wanted to mention? The fleeting thought of buried treasure made me chuckle. It sounded absurd, but in that moment I realized, with my father, anything was possible. As I approached the marked spot, a small red dot on the map, I turned off the engine from a distance and parked on the muddy shoulder. I didn't want to make noise, I thought. Or was it just instinctual caution? I slung on my backpack, locked the car, and continued on foot along a narrow trail. The path was tight, with protruding roots underfoot that nearly tripped me several times. The air was piercingly cold, seeping through my jacket. My breath formed white puffs. The surroundings were eerily silent, broken only by falling leaves and distant bird calls. I walked for about half an hour, sweating despite the chill, when suddenly a small wooden cabin appeared in the midst of the forest. It was completely isolated, with no other homes nearby, like a forgotten oasis. The cabin was simple: dark wooden walls, a steep roof covered in green moss, windows frosted with dust. I stopped, my heart pounding. Was this the place? I moved closer and noticed clear signs of habitation. Lazy smoke drifting from the chimney, firewood neatly stacked on the porch, the yard swept clean of even a single withered leaf. Someone was living here. It wasn't abandoned. I was bewildered, my mind spinning. Why had my father led me to a place like this without ever mentioning it? When had he bought this cabin? For what purpose? A hideaway? Or something darker? I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Now was the time to open the envelope, as instructed. But first, I needed to look more closely. I approached the window, peering through the foggy glass. And then I froze. Inside the kitchen, a woman around my age was cooking. She was about 35, with long hair tied back, wearing an old sweater, stirring something in a pot on the gas stove. Her face was calm, but there was a weariness to it, as if she were escaping the world. My heart raced wildly. Who was she? Why was she living alone in the middle of the forest? And what was her connection to my father? My father, the strict, faithful man devoted to my mother, how could he be linked to a strange woman in such a remote place? A flood of questions repeated in my mind, reminding me of the letter and the instruction to read it here. I stepped back, returned to the car, and sat silently in the cold cabin for a while. My hands trembled as I held the envelope. This was the moment. I tore the red wax seal and opened it. Handwritten paper, my father's script, shaky, just like on the map. I took a deep breath and began reading. My dear son Lucas, if you are reading these words, it means I have passed away. I didn't want to cause you pain, but there are secrets I had to carry to the end of my life, and now I must ask you for help. The woman in the wooden cabin is named Evelyn Cross. 7 years ago, I happened to save her from a suicide attempt by jumping off a bridge. It was a stormy night on the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. I was driving home after a late shift and saw her standing on the railing, panicked and desperate. Her eyes were red and swollen, her whole body shaking as if her world had collapsed. I pulled her back, held her tightly, and took her to a motel for the night. She said nothing, just cried all night. I paused, my heart tightening. My father saved someone? Why hadn't he told me? I continued reading, his voice echoing in my head. After many days of comforting her and stabilizing her mentally, I tried to ask about her identity and the reason she wanted to die. But no matter how hard I tried, Evelyn refused to speak. She was terrified, trembling whenever I mentioned her past. She only begged to stay temporarily and asked me not to tell anyone to avoid trouble. I saw real fear in her eyes, not fake. Perhaps she was fleeing from someone or something terrible. I didn't want to draw attention or harm her, so I brought Evelyn to this wooden cabin, a place I bought 8 years ago, originally as a personal retreat, but now it became her sanctuary. I took care of her, bringing food, medicine, and gradually, through my visits, I swallowed dryly, a bad premonition rising. Through the times I brought supplies or simply fixed things around the house for her, a deep bond grew between us. Not a romantic love in the usual sense, but an attachment like two lonely souls finding each other. I know this was wrong, son. I already had your mother, a wonderful wife. But Evelyn, she needed me and I needed the peace she brought. We were bound together for 7 years, quietly with no one knowing. Deep bond? Attachment? I was stunned, my hands shaking as I held the letter. My father had an affair with a strange woman. The thought cut into my heart like a knife. How could he? With my mother, the woman who had sacrificed her whole life for him. When I learned my health was failing, the first heart pain a few months ago, I wrote this letter. I beg you, Lucas, please take care of Evelyn in my place. She has no one else. Keep everything secret from your mother because I wronged her. I don't want to destroy what remains of the family. Evelyn was part of me, but you are the future. Please forgive me and do the right thing. Love, Harold. Finishing the letter, I was numb. For the first time, I realized my father had carried such a massive secret to his grave. He wasn't the perfect father I had imagined. He was human, with flaws and complicated emotions. Tears welled up in my eyes, the first since the funeral. Not from anger, but from pain. Pain for my mother, pain for my father, and pain for myself. Evelyn, the woman in the wooden cabin, was now my responsibility. I looked toward the cabin where smoke still rose from the chimney. She was there, unaware of my father's death. What should I do? Walk away, pretend I had never come, or face it? The letter from my father lay crumpled in my hand, its shaky lines like whispers from beyond the grave. He had lived a double life, a faithful husband at home and a secret protector here. Now that burden had fallen onto my shoulders. I wiped away my tears with the back of my hand and took a deep breath filled with the damp scent of pine. I sat in the car for a long time, perhaps half an hour, my mind swirling with a dozen thoughts. Leaving would be easy. Drive back to Seattle, pretend I had never read the letter, pretend this cabin was just a hallucination. But then what? The secret would haunt me forever, like a ghost lingering in sleepless nights. Or face it, walk into the strange cabin, talk to a woman my father had bonded with. The thought made my stomach twist. Did she know about my mother? Did she know that their actions had betrayed another woman? I glanced at my watch. It was nearly noon, sunlight filtering through the canopy and casting dappled patterns on the ground. Finally, I made my decision. I had to meet her. Not out of curiosity, but because of the unspoken promise to my father. I stepped out of the car, my feet heavy as if weighted with lead, and walked toward the wooden cabin. The muddy trail to the front door was slick from the fog. My shoes sank deep into the mud. The forest wind whispered through the leaves like a warning not to go any farther. The cabin looked closer now, more detailed. Frosted windows, old fabric curtains obscuring the interior, and the faint smell of wood smoke. I stopped at the door, my trembling hand touching the knob. The key my father had left. Did I need to use it? Or just knock? My heart pounded wildly, cold sweat breaking out despite the chill. I took a deep breath and pushed the door. It was unlocked, opening with a soft creak like a whisper from the past. Inside, the air was warmer, filled with the aroma of vegetable soup and toasted bread. Evelyn was in the kitchen, her back to me, stirring a pot on the old gas stove. She whirled around at the sound of the door, her eyes wide with fear. Her face went pale, and the vegetable peeler in her hand trembled as she pointed it at me. "Who are you? How dare you come in here? Get out now!" Her voice was panicked, shrill like a suppressed scream. She backed up a few steps, her back hitting the wooden table, her eyes darting around for an escape. I raised my hands, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I'm Lucas Bennett, son of Harold Bennett, my father. He sent me here. I have something important to discuss." My father's name seemed to work like magic. Evelyn froze, the peeler lowering slowly, but her eyes remained full of suspicion. Harold? He never mentioned a son. Why should I believe you? She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving. I could see real fear in her eyes, not feigned. 7 years in hiding had clearly made her wary of everything. I have proof, I said, slowly pulling the letter from my pocket. He left this, and the key, the map. He told me to come here. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking from me to the letter, then nodded reluctantly. All right, come in, but sit far away from me. We sat across from each other at the old wooden table, its surface scarred from years of use. The cabin was simple. A crackling fireplace, cluttered bookshelves with a few old novels and a small bed in the corner. No TV, no phone, complete isolation. I took a very deep breath and began to tell her. My father, he passed away a week ago. The funeral is over. My voice softened, but I tried to stay composed. Then I told her about the letter, how my father had saved her, cared for her quietly over the years, and before closing his eyes forever, his only request was that I take his place in protecting her. Upon hearing of Harold's death, Evelyn could no longer hold back her emotions. Her face contorted, her eyes reddened, and then tears streamed down like a broken dam. It can't be. He was everything to me. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking, sobs echoing in the quiet room. I sat still, unsure what to do. Seeing her in such pain, I realized their bond was deeper than I had imagined. It wasn't a fling, it wasn't an affair, it was a genuine connection. She looked up, her eyes blurred with tears. He saved me from hell. Now he's gone. What do I have left? Her voice broke, and a strange sense of compassion crept into my heart. This woman, a victim of some past trauma, had now lost her only protector. When I mentioned Harold's wish, that I should take care of her, get her out of the forest, Evelyn shook her head. I need time to think. This place, it has sheltered me for 7 years. I'm not ready to leave. Please leave me alone. Her voice was firm but weary. I respected that decision. Demanding more right away would only make things worse. I stood up, leaving the letter on the table. All right, I'll come back, but think about it carefully. My father wanted you safe. I left the wooden cabin, the door slamming shut behind me, my mood as heavy as if I were carrying a boulder. On the drive back, my head was full of unanswered questions. Who was Evelyn really? What was her past? And me, a lonely book editor in Seattle, how could I take care of a stranger? What would my mother think if she knew? This secret was tearing me apart from the inside. About a week later, I couldn't bear it anymore. Sleepless nights, images of Evelyn alone in the forest haunting me. I bought groceries and essentials, bread, fruit, medicine, even a few books of my own, and drove up again. The road was more familiar now, but the unease still surged. Light rain fell, making the path muddy. When I arrived, the cabin was unusually silent. No smoke from the chimney, no signs of life. My heart tightened. I knocked, no answer. I used the key my father had left, opened the door and stepped in. And then I panicked. Evelyn was lying unconscious on the floor, her face flushed with high fever, the cabin cold without a fire. She was breathing weakly, drenched in sweat. Evelyn, what's wrong? Wake up. I knelt down, shaking her, but she only groaned faintly. I picked her up. Her body was frighteningly light and frail, and ran to the car. I drove like a maniac down the mountain. As the phone signal returned, I called emergency services. The nearest hospital was 2 hours away, but I made it in an hour and a half, my heart pounding as if it would burst. At the hospital, the doctors diagnosed exhaustion, hypothermia, and high fever. I stayed to care for her, sitting by her bedside all night. Looking at her lying there, pale and weak, I thought about my father. How many times had he done this? Brought supplies, made repairs, and now I was taking his place. The next morning, Evelyn woke up, her eyes hazy as she looked at me. You saved me? Her voice was faint. I nodded and recounted what happened. Then, in the hospital, I once again spoke of Harold's wish. You can't live like this forever. I live alone in Seattle, busy with books at work, but I have room for you. Living isolated in the forest is dangerous. Illness, wild animals, loneliness. My father wanted you safe. Evelyn was silent for a long time, staring out the hospital window at the passing traffic. Her eyes held inner conflict, fear of the past, but also a longing for the future. She whispered, I'm afraid of the world out there, but your father trusted you. Finally, she nodded in agreement. All right, I'll go with you and live together. Those words lifted a weight from my chest, not just because of duty, but because I saw she truly needed help. A few days after discharge, once her health stabilized, I drove Evelyn back to the wooden cabin to pack her things. The road up the mountain this time felt different, not anxious, but tinged with regret. Evelyn stepped inside, her trembling hand touching the wooden table, the bookshelves. This is all I have, she said, gathering a few old clothes, the books my father had brought her, and a small box of keepsakes. We closed the chapter on her hidden life, turned off the stove, locked the door, and left. On the drive back to Seattle, Evelyn sat silently, watching the forest recede. Thank you, Lucas, she said softly. I nodded, but in my mind I thought, this is only the beginning. This secret will change everything. The winding mountain road gradually gave way to the straight highway, the steady hum of the engine mirroring my heartbeat, chaotic and unrelenting. Evelyn leaned her head against the seat, eyes closed, but I knew she wasn't asleep. The fear was still there, lurking in the silences. And me? I was bringing home a woman my father had loved in his own way, a secret that could destroy everything if it came to light. What would my mother think? My job? My solitary life? All of it was about to be turned upside down. By the time we reached my apartment in Seattle, it was late afternoon. The small, cramped unit was on the third floor of an old building in Capitol Hill, filled with stacks of books on the shelves and the lingering scent of stale coffee. I opened the door, turned on the lights, and tried to make the atmosphere warmer. I said, my voice a bit forced, "This is my place. Nothing fancy, but it's clean. I'll set up the living room for you as a private space." Evelyn stepped inside, looking around with a sense of unfamiliarity. She touched the sofa lightly, then gazed out the window where the streetlights were beginning to glow. "It's been so long since I've seen city streets," she whispered. I nodded, maintaining the respect and distance needed. No touching, no probing questions. I made up the sofa with fresh sheets, placed clean pillows and blankets, and showed her the bathroom. "Get some rest. I'll make something simple." She gave a faint smile, but her eyes remained wary. In the beginning, we both lived cautiously, like two strangers forced to share a home. Little personal conversation, just polite questions over meals. Evelyn still carried her guardedness, those untouchable silences. She often sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall on the streets, hands tightly clutching a hot cup of tea. Sometimes in the dead of night, I would hear her jolt awake, murmuring incoherent words in her sleep, but I didn't dare ask. I just stood quietly outside the door, afraid of shattering the fragility she was trying to preserve. I reminded myself, this is my father's responsibility, nothing more. But deep down, I felt a strange worry for her and for myself. My book editing work continued as usual, waking early, reading manuscripts, correcting typos, debating with authors via email. But now, coming home was no longer lonely. There were light footsteps, the scent of soap from the bathroom, and the presence of another person. I cared for her properly without crossing boundaries. Simple cooking, pasta, vegetable salads, toasted bread, and leaving portions for her if I came home late. Driving her to follow up appointments at the hospital, waiting in the hallway while the doctor examined her. "Her health is stable now," the doctor said, "but mental health needs monitoring." I nodded, saying nothing about her past. I gave her space, not entering the room when she was alone, not asking about the nightmares. Pressure would only make things worse. Gradually, I noticed changes. Evelyn became more proactive in daily life. She started helping clear the table, wash dishes, even buying a few bunches of flowers from the nearby market to place on the table. The nightmares grew less frequent. I heard fewer muffled cries in the night. Her sleep stabilized, her face lost its pallor, and smiles appeared more often. But then, I realized I was caring about Evelyn's feelings far beyond the duty my father had left me. Not pity, not obligation, but a deeper emotion quietly growing day by day to the point where even I couldn't name it in time. I began noticing small details, the way she read books, how she liked sitting by the window watching the rain, the gentle tone of her voice when talking about the old novels in the wooden cabin. That quiet concern gradually turned into something else, something unfamiliar and hard to name. My heart beat faster when she smiled, and evenings spent watching old movies on TV together became strangely warm. I wondered, what is this? Love? Or just a bond from our shared secret? I tried to suppress it, reminding myself of my father, of my mother. But the feelings kept growing like a smoldering fire beneath ashes. Evelyn, too, began leaning on me as a source of support, not out of weakness, but because for the first time she could trust someone. She started sharing small things. Today I walked in the park, the first time in 7 years. Or what books do you like? Can I try reading them? We talked about literature. I was an editor, and she had once loved books before her life was upended. Our feelings grew day by day through the smallest things. A hot cup of tea in the morning, a shared smile, an evening listening to jazz on the old radio. But neither of us spoke it aloud. We avoided it, as if saying it would destroy everything. Tension crept into every moment. Would today be the day I admitted it? Or would she push me away? Then that moment came, sudden and uncontainable. One evening of heavy rain, Seattle drowned in torrents. We sat on the sofa watching an old movie about love and loss. Evelyn rested her head on my shoulder without a word. My heart pounded, warmth spreading through me. I turned to her, looking into her eyes, eyes that once held only fear, now sparkling with something different. I whispered her name. She didn't pull away. We came together, lips meeting in a moment when emotions overcame restraint. It wasn't lust, but confirmation, two lonely souls finally finding each other. That night we were together, gentle and sincere, as if all the secrets had dissolved. After that night, we needed no promises or labels, but naturally lived as a deeply bonded couple. Waking up beside each other, cooking breakfast together, sharing little stories. Our life together continued in outward calm. I went to work, and she gradually found small tasks like helping me organize manuscripts. But I gradually realized Evelyn still carried a past she couldn't let go. On some late nights, she would jolt awake, murmuring fearful words in her sleep. "Stop, Thomas, don't force me." A stranger's name and fragmented memories echoed in the darkness. I held her, stroked her back, but my heart grew heavy. What was that past? Why did it still haunt her? I gently probed several times during quiet evenings. What did you dream about? Tell me. But Evelyn always evaded, eyes distant. It's not time yet for me to tell you, Lucas. I'm not ready. I respected it, didn't push, but anxiety built. Would this secret destroy us? Finally, on a quiet evening with rain pattering against the window, Evelyn decided to tell everything. We sat at the dining table after a simple dinner. She held my hand, her voice trembling. You deserve to know the truth. I don't want to deceive you anymore. Evelyn recounted that her father, Thomas Cross, a billionaire in New York, had forced her into an engagement with the son of another powerful family to serve business interests. He turned me into a tool, a pawn in his power games. Her voice broke, tears streaming down. When she resisted, he disowned her, ordered her confined in the mansion, and cut off all contact. He forced me to sign away my inheritance rights, threatening to publicly claim I had voluntarily left the family. I was isolated, threatened, mentally controlled until I couldn't breathe. Evelyn escaped one night, intending to end it all by suicide. I was going to jump into the river, finish everything. But Harold, Your father happened to save me. He saw me on the bridge and pulled me back." She continued. She begged him not to call the police, not to send her back to New York, just to let her hide and live quietly. Harold, out of compassion, couldn't abandon her, so he took her to the wooden cabin and cared for her silently ever since. When she finished, Evelyn sobbed, clinging to me. "I'm so tired of hiding, and I don't want to lie to you. Please don't let that past come to light. This peaceful present is the only thing I want to hold on to." I listened, my heart aching with pain. Not anger, but pity. Hearing the whole story, I didn't pull away. Instead, I felt even more love and attachment to Evelyn. She, a victim of a tyrannical father, was now the most important part of my life. I realized my feelings had gone far beyond protection or duty. This was real love, profound and unconditional. I held her and whispered, "I won't let anyone hurt you again. We'll be together for the long haul. I want to give you a proper place. Be my wife." Evelyn looked up, eyes glistening with tears, and nodded. In that moment, the secret was no longer a burden, but a bridge. But in my mind, a thought flashed. Would my mother accept it? This secret was about to be brought into the light, and the anxiety surged once more. In the days that followed, thoughts of my mother haunted me like a lingering shadow. My mother, Margaret Bennett, still lived alone in the old house on the outskirts of Seattle, the place where my father had once meticulously repaired every little corner. She was strong, but I knew the pain of losing her husband lingered, hidden deep beneath her calm exterior. Evelyn and I had been living together as a real couple, but to make it official, I had to bring her home to meet my mother. This wasn't just a formality. It was a turning point, a confrontation with the past my father had kept hidden. I hesitated for weeks, weighing my words, preparing myself mentally. Finally, on a Sunday morning with light drizzle, I called her. "Mom, I want to bring someone special home. Can we have dinner together?" Her voice was calm. "Of course. Bring her over. I'll prepare dinner and wait." We drove to my mother's house, Evelyn sitting beside me, her hands tightly clutching her dress, her face pale with anxiety. I held her hand, trying to reassure her. "I'll be right here with you. We'll tell the truth, but gently." The house appeared familiar. The small garden, the faint aroma of baking drifting from the kitchen. My mother opened the door with a warm smile for me, but when she saw Evelyn, she froze. Her face went blank for a moment, eyes widening as if recognizing something terrible. She quickly regained her composure, but throughout the evening she only observed several times, seeming about to speak but holding back. Dinner unfolded in strained silence. Mom asked about my work, about the weather, but her gaze kept turning to Evelyn, full of scrutiny. After the meal, while Evelyn helped clear the table, my mother pulled me into the living room. "Son, who is she? Why did you bring her here?" Her voice was low but tense. I took a deep breath and told her everything. About my father's letter, about Evelyn, about our feelings. Mom sat motionless, her face ashen. Finally, she admitted, "I've known about the relationship between Harold and Evelyn for a long time. I happened to see him taking food up into the forest and followed him a few times. I chose silence to preserve the family because I loved him. But now, Evelyn appearing and wanting to marry my son is something I cannot accept." Her words cut into my heart like a knife. She knew? For 7 years she had borne the pain alone? And now she was rejecting Evelyn, the woman I loved? Hearing those words, I fell into shock. For the first time, I realized my love was facing the most difficult boundary to cross. I looked at her, eyes reddening. "Mom, why didn't you say anything? Why did you suffer alone?" She shook her head, voice trembling. "For the family. But her, she is your father's past. I cannot watch my son marry my husband's former lover." I left my mother's house with a heavy heart, Evelyn sitting silently beside me. On the drive home, she cried, "I don't want to destroy your family." But I held her. "We'll get through this. I won't give up." In the days that followed, I tried to explain to my mother. I called her every day, visited her home, sat by the fireplace telling her about Evelyn. Not as my father's old flame, but as a deeply wounded woman who had found hope through our love. Evelyn isn't at fault in this story, Mom. My relationship with her has nothing to do with Dad's past. This is the present, the future. Mom listened but remained silent, her eyes full of inner conflict. I saw her growing more weary, her silver hair seeming grayer, and my heart ached. Anxiety surged with every visit. Would today be the day she accepted, or would she push us further away? Evelyn took the initiative first. One afternoon, she turned to me and said, "I want to meet your mother, to tell the truth." I hesitated for a moment, filled with worry, but I nodded. I drove Evelyn to my mother's house. She brought a bouquet of white lilies. We entered together. Mom invited Evelyn to sit at the kitchen table. I stayed, sitting across from them, saying nothing, just listening quietly. Evelyn spoke first, her voice soft but clear. "I'm not here to apologize for the past, because I didn't choose it." My mother remained silent. Evelyn continued without evasion. "But I hope you'll see me as an independent person." She paused briefly, then went on, her voice lower. "I once wanted to die. I was so terrified I didn't dare trust anyone. If not for Harold, I wouldn't be here." The air in the kitchen grew heavy. My mother listened, eyes reddening, but didn't interrupt. Evelyn looked up at her. "He saved me. But now I love Lucas. Not out of gratitude, but because he's the best man I've ever known." Only then did I speak, my voice trembling. "I love Evelyn, Mom." I looked straight at her. "I'm ready to leave this place and go far away if you can't accept her. But deep down, I don't want to lose either of you, you and Evelyn." My mother looked at me for a long time. Then she turned to Evelyn, no longer as her husband's old lover, but as a woman who had been profoundly hurt. Finally, she sighed. "I need time, but I see that you're happy." She said nothing more, just a slight nod. That evening, the three of us sat together at the dinner table. No one spoke much. No small talk, no forcing it, just quiet presence, awkward but warm, like a family learning to start over. After Margaret's acceptance, I officially proposed to Evelyn. No dazzling diamond ring, no fancy restaurant, just a simple moment in the park near home, under the autumn cherry blossoms. I knelt down, holding her hand. "Will you marry me?" Evelyn cried and nodded. We held a small wedding at our home, the apartment now more spacious after renovations. Only a few close friends and family attended. Mr. Arthur, some colleagues, and my mother. She wore a new dress with a genuine smile. The priest gave the blessing, we exchanged rings and shared our first kiss under flickering candlelight. In that moment, the anxiety melted away, giving way to peace. After the wedding, Evelyn and I began our married life as a true husband and wife, with no more distance or hesitation. We woke up together, brewed coffee, read books by the window. We redecorated the apartment together, painting the walls a soft blue, buying a new dining table, hanging paintings Evelyn had created, abstract works of forests and rivers. We shared everything, home-cooked meals, good books, evenings listening to jazz by the window as rain pattered outside. Evelyn gradually found work, freelance editing to help me, and I was proud of her. Life was simple but overflowing with love. A few months later, Evelyn became pregnant. The news came unexpectedly one morning when she was nauseous and the test showed 2 lines. For the first time in her life, she felt she truly belonged to a place called family. "We're going to have a baby," she whispered, hand on her belly. I held her, tears of joy streaming down. I cared for her devotedly throughout the pregnancy, cooking nutritious soups, taking her to regular checkups, massaging her feet when she was tired. My mother also began showing more care, occasionally visiting with homemade food, fresh-baked bread, chicken soup, and sitting to talk with Evelyn about motherhood. "I was so scared when I was pregnant with you," she shared with a warm smile. When the baby arrived, Lena Bennett, a beautiful little girl with dark hair and blue eyes like Evelyn's, we all shed tears in that moment. I held Lena, warmth spreading through me as if the old fractures had finally been healed by new life. My mother embraced her granddaughter, whispering, "Welcome to the family." Evelyn looked at Lena, eyes shining. "I finally have a real family." Our life continued in peace, simple yet brimming with love. Mornings waking to Lena's cries, evenings lulling her to sleep with fairy tales. Evelyn felt she had finally stepped out of the darkness of her past. But deep down, I knew life wasn't always calm. Anxiety still lingered. Would Evelyn's past return? Would Thomas Cross come looking? But for now, we were happy, and that was everything. The months passed like a serene river flowing gently. Lena grew incredibly fast, her jet black hair curling tightly, her sparkling blue eyes just like her mother's. The little girl giggled delightedly whenever I picked her up, and Evelyn often watched us with a tender smile, as if she couldn't believe this was reality. I continued my work as an editor, buried in manuscripts, but coming home was no longer to a cold, empty apartment. There were the sounds of a child's laughter, the aroma of baking from the kitchen, and Evelyn's warm embrace. My mother visited more frequently, bringing toys for Lena or homemade dishes. She and Evelyn now behaved like mother and daughter. They sat chatting for hours about child-rearing or old memories. "She looks just like you when you were little," Mom once said, stroking Lena's hair. I thought everything was settled, that my father's secret and Evelyn's past had been buried deep beneath the layers of time. But life always holds surprises, and that surprise arrived on an ordinary late afternoon. We were gathered around the dinner table as we were every evening. Evelyn held Lena on her lap, feeding her spoonfuls of pureed vegetable soup, while I recounted a humorous manuscript from the office. The warm yellow light shone down on the table, the scent of roasted meat filling the air. Lena grinned widely, flailing her arms and knocking the spoon to the floor. We laughed along with her, a perfect family moment. Then came a knock at the door, 3 polite but firm knocks. I frowned, glancing at Evelyn. "Are you expecting someone?" She shook her head, a flicker of worry in her eyes. I stood up and opened the door. A middle-aged woman stood there, dressed impeccably in a gray suit, hair neatly pinned up, carrying a black briefcase. She smiled professionally, but her eyes were sharp and cold. "Good evening. I am the personal assistant to Mr. Thomas Cross. I am here to see Mrs. Evelyn Cross, or should I say Bennett now." The name Thomas Cross exploded like a bomb in the room. Evelyn went pale, stepping back a few paces, clutching Lena tightly as if afraid someone might snatch her away. Her face drained of color, eyes wide with terror. "It can't be. Who are you? How did you find us here?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I instinctively moved in front of her, my heart pounding. "Who are you? How do you know about us?" My tone was sharp, full of wariness. The woman remained unfazed, maintaining her smile. "I am Lydia Grant, Mr. Cross's assistant. I am not here to cause trouble or take Mrs. Evelyn back. I only wish to deliver his final message." She glanced inside the house, her eyes briefly lingering on Lena. I hesitated, looking at Evelyn. She nodded weakly, though her whole body was shaking. I invited the woman in, closed the door, but kept my distance. Evelyn remained huddled by the kitchen doorway, holding Lena even tighter, trying to stay composed despite her face looking like it might crumble. We sat in the living room, the atmosphere tense as a drawn bowstring. Lydia sat upright, opening her briefcase to retrieve an envelope but not handing it over immediately. She spoke concisely, her voice even like reading a report. "Mr. Thomas Cross is gravely ill. Terminal cancer. His remaining time is measured in days. The only thing he wants is to see his daughter one last time." Her words cut like a knife. Evelyn froze, saying nothing, only gripping my hand tightly as if clinging to her last shred of sanity. Her eyes stared blankly, tears rolling down unnoticed. Lydia sighed. "He is filled with regret now. This is his final wish. He is in New York at the Cross estate. If Mrs. Evelyn agrees, I will arrange the flight." She handed over the envelope, a handwritten letter in shaky script, then stood and left, leaving behind a suffocating silence. That night, Evelyn didn't sleep. She lay beside me, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, her body ice cold. In the days that followed, she sank into a deep silence. She slept poorly, often waking in the middle of the night, screaming from nightmares. "Stop, Father. Don't force me." Her eyes were always filled with turmoil, resentment, fear, and a hint of pity. I didn't pressure Evelyn, just quietly stayed by her side, handling every small task, brewing hot tea, holding her when she trembled, putting Lena to sleep so Evelyn could rest. "You don't have to decide right away," I whispered. But inside, anxiety surged. Thomas Cross, the man who had nearly destroyed my wife's spirit, was now dying. Would meeting him heal the wounds or deepen them? One evening, as we sat together while Lena slept soundly in the dimly lit living room with only the faint glow of a table lamp, I gently advised her. "You don't have to forgive him, Evelyn. But perhaps you should meet him once to close it all. Otherwise, this will weigh on you forever, like a ghost that never fades." I held her hand, my voice soft. "I'm telling you that no matter what happens, I'll be here by your side as always. We are family." Evelyn was silent for a long time, tears streaming down. Then, bolstered by my steadfast encouragement and unconditional love, along with her own resolve to face the past, she nodded in agreement. "I'll go, to finally end the cycle that's haunted me for so many years." Her words brought me relief, but also worry. We were about to walk into the lion's den. We flew to New York a few days later, leaving Lena with my mother. The long flight passed in silence, Evelyn gripping my hand tightly. New York emerged with its towering skyscrapers, but to us it felt like a nightmarish labyrinth. The Cross estate was on the outskirts, a vast mansion with towering iron gates and meticulously trimmed gardens. Lydia was waiting and led us inside. As we entered the grand foyer, a heavy atmosphere enveloped us. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the fragrance of lilies. Almost immediately upon stepping in, Evelyn came face to face with her stepmother, Genevieve Cross, and her stepsister, Chloe Cross. They stood there like two cold stone statues. Genevieve, a woman in her 50s with curled blonde hair and expensive clothing, looked at Evelyn with contempt. Chloe, younger, around 25, resembling her mother with a fake smile, stood with arms crossed, eyes scrutinizing. The atmosphere instantly turned hostile. Genevieve sneered right away. "Oh, Evelyn suddenly reappears after vanishing for over 7 years. Must have heard he's dying and come back to claim the inheritance, right?" Her voice was sweet but venomous. Chloe chimed in, openly insulting. "You abandoned the family yourself, running away like a rat. What right do you have to come back now? Or do you still think you're the princess?" Their words stabbed like knives. Evelyn tried to stay calm, but the bitter remarks made her tremble, stirring up old memories, the days of confinement and coercion. Her face went ashen, her hand squeezing mine tightly. I stepped forward to defend her, my voice firm. "That's enough. We came here at Mr. Cross's invitation, not to argue. Show some respect for Evelyn. She is his daughter." Genevieve smirked. "Daughter? She's the family's disgrace." Chloe glared. "And who are you? The new husband? Or a gold digger?" The air grew so thick it felt ready to explode. Fortunately, Lydia intervened in time, stepping between us. "Mr. Cross is waiting. Let me escort you in." She led me and Evelyn to the sick room, separating us from the suffocating space outside, where Genevieve and Chloe still stood, their poisonous gazes following our every step. The sick room was at the end of the hallway. The heavy wooden door opened with a soft creak. Inside, the air was chilling, machines beeping steadily, the strong smell of antiseptic overwhelming. As we entered, Evelyn saw Thomas lying motionless on the hospital bed, far gaunter and more withered than the powerful figure in her memories. He had once been a towering tycoon, tall and imposing with a voice like thunder. Now he was skin and bones, his face wrinkled and creased, eyes cloudy beneath drooping lids. 4 lines dangled, the ventilator hissing with each breath. In that moment, all the resentment, fear, and pain surged within her at once, leaving her standing speechless. I stood beside her, holding my wife's hand, my heart constricting. Thomas opened his eyes, recognizing his daughter, and his voice rasped weakly, "Evelyn, you've come." The tension peaked. What would this meeting bring to an end? Evelyn stood there, her hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt, but she did not retreat. After years of separation, she now slowly approached the bedside, each step heavy as if carrying the weight of the entire past. I followed, keeping just enough distance to avoid intruding on this private moment, yet ready to step in if I needed to protect her. Thomas lay there, his frail body beneath the white blanket, wrinkled skin sagging, his cloudy eyes suddenly clearing as he recognized his daughter. A flood of emotions washed over his face, regret, joy, pain, all blending into a faint smile. He rasped her name, his words broken and halting as if each one had to wrestle with death itself. "Evelyn, is it really you? My daughter. I've waited for you so long." Evelyn said nothing. She didn't cry, didn't accuse, just silently gazed at him as if trying to confirm whether the man before her was truly her father, the once powerful figure who had turned her life into hell with his cold decisions. Her face was strangely calm, but I could feel the storm raging inside through her trembling hand. I stood behind her, my heart pounding, tension rising. Would she forgive him? Or turn away, leaving him to depart with unending remorse? Thomas coughed a few times, the ventilator hissing. Then his breathing steadied slightly after the dose Lydia had just administered. His gaze shifted to me, scanning me from head to toe as if assessing an intruder in his world. Then he spoke in a hoarse, weak but clear voice. "You're her husband? I know about you. Thank you for taking care of Evelyn all this time." I nodded in greeting, saying little. Just a polite nod, then stepped back to let Evelyn face him alone. But I kept my eyes watchful, protective, ready to intervene if he said anything to hurt her. Thomas turned back to Evelyn, his eyes glistening with tears, as if years of suppressed emotion were finally breaking free. He began speaking of things he had never said before, his voice filled with regret. "My daughter. I've regretted chasing fame and power all those years ago. I listened to Genevieve and forced you into that political marriage. I thought it was best for the family, for the empire. But I was wrong. You are my daughter, not a pawn." His words were like self-inflicted wounds, and I saw Evelyn grip my hand tighter as if struggling to stay composed. The pent-up resentment in Evelyn finally erupted. She was silent no longer. Her voice broke but remained resolute. "You turned me into a pawn. You forced me into an engagement with someone I didn't love, cut off everything, locked me up like a prisoner. You drove me to collapse, to the point where I sought death, jumping into the river to end it all. Now that I have my own happiness, a husband, a daughter, you come disturbing it? Why couldn't you just leave me in peace?" Her words were sharp, laden with 7 years of accumulated pain echoing in the quiet hospital room. I saw Thomas shrink back, his face twisting in agony, but he offered no excuses. Instead, he reached out weakly for her hand, his bony fingers trembling. "When you left, I lived in torment. I frantically sent people to search for you, but found nothing. I thought you were dead, and that hurt more than anything I've ever known." He paused, gasping for breath, the machines beeping louder. Lydia glanced through the door but didn't enter. Thomas continued, his voice fading. "Only when you reappeared with Lucas did I learn you were alive, but I lacked the courage to face you. I only watched from afar through my assistant. I saw you happy with your husband, with your daughter. I was glad for you, but it broke my heart." His words chilled me. He had been watching us. Since when? The thought made my heart race, but I stayed silent, focusing on Evelyn. She stood motionless, eyes reddening, saying nothing. Then she turned to me, seeking an anchor, and when I gave her a gentle nod of encouragement, a nod full of love, affirming I was always by her side, she exhaled softly as if a weight had lifted from her chest. She turned back to Thomas, her voice calmer. I've let go of it all long ago. I came here not out of resentment, but to close everything once and for all. You are my father, after all. Those words were an implicit forgiveness, not complete, but enough to set her free. Thomas smiled, a relieved smile after years of gnawing guilt, his eyes lighting up one last time. Thank you for forgiving me. I love you. Then he slowly closed his eyes, his breathing weakening, the machines alarming. Lydia rushed in, followed by doctors, but we knew he had left this world forever. Evelyn stood there, feeling no sharp pain, no tears, just an indefinable cold emptiness in her heart. We left the room. Genevieve and Chloe stood in the hallway, faces impassive, but they dared say nothing. On the way back to the hotel, Evelyn was silent, but her hand was warmer, as if the final burden had fallen away. 3 days later, Thomas Cross's funeral was held in grandeur befitting his status, a tycoon. The vast mourning hall in central New York was covered in white lilies, filled with elegantly dressed guests in black suits, politicians and businessmen alike. Evelyn and I appearing caused the atmosphere in the hall to freeze. People whispered, eyes turning toward us as if we were intruders. Genevieve and Chloe stood by the casket, gazing at her with cold contempt, as if trying to burn us with their stares. Evelyn wore a simple black dress, holding a bouquet of white lilies, and approached the casket with composure. She placed the flowers and whispered a final goodbye, but Genevieve wouldn't let it be. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly in the silent hall. Her eyes fixed on Evelyn, her voice slow but laced with sarcasm. You have no right to be here, Evelyn. After everything you've done, running away without a word, cutting off contact, leaving him in torment for his final years. Why are you back now? To pretend to grieve? Whispers immediately spread throughout the hall. Evelyn stood still, back straight, but I clearly saw her hands clench slightly. Before the tension could settle, Chloe stepped forward, her voice shrill and filled with undisguised hatred. Don't think just showing up here lets you claim anything. This family's assets belong to my mother and me. You're just an outsider, a stain we've tried to forget for so long. Their words were like pouring oil on fire. The guests began murmuring louder, eyes turning to Evelyn with all sorts of speculation. I stepped forward, positioning myself fully in front of her. My voice wasn't loud, but deep and clear, audible throughout the hall. This is a funeral, not a courtroom where you can appoint yourselves judges. Genevieve turned to me, her gaze icy. I didn't flinch, continuing slowly and firmly. Today, Evelyn isn't here to explain herself, to beg, or certainly not to fight for anything. She is here in the one capacity none of you have the right to strip from her, as a daughter bidding farewell to her biological father. Chloe tried to interrupt, but I didn't give her the chance. You can hate her. You can recount the story in whatever way suits you, but don't confuse that with the truth. I looked straight at Chloe, my voice turning colder. The truth is that Thomas Cross was Evelyn's father. Blood ties aren't something you can erase with a few insults or disdainful looks. The entire hall fell into a heavy silence. I continued, each word distinct. If you continue turning this farewell into a personal smear campaign today, the ones tarnishing Mr. Cross's honor won't be Evelyn, it will be you. Genevieve pressed her lips tightly, her face paling with anger. Chloe flushed red, clearly wanting to say more, but the guests' gazes had shifted. Not curiosity anymore, but wariness and discomfort. Evelyn then gently placed her hand on my arm. She didn't look at Genevieve or Chloe again. Her voice was calm, not loud but clear enough. I'm here today for one reason only, to send off my father. Nothing else matters to me. With that, she turned away. We left the mourning hall in silence. Behind us, Genevieve and Chloe said nothing more. Not because they understood, but because in front of so many people, they no longer had the courage to continue exposing their venom. Evelyn paid no mind to Genevieve and Chloe's sarcasm. For her, returning to bid farewell to her biological father one last time was enough. An act to close the past, not for revenge or demands. When all the rites ended, the The priest's prayers, the casket lowered into the grave, she quietly left the place with me without looking back. On the way to the car, the chilly autumn wind whipped against our faces, carrying the scent of withered leaves and lingering incense. Evelyn gripped my hand tightly but said nothing. We boarded the flight back to Seattle that very afternoon, leaving Lena and my mother waiting at home. The long flight dragged on endlessly. Evelyn rested her head on my shoulder, eyes closed, but I knew she wasn't sleeping. Yet deep inside, a vague premonition rose. This death of Thomas Cross wasn't an ending, but perhaps the beginning of another storm. Anxiety crept in, like whispers from a past that refused to rest. Back in Seattle, our little home felt like a peaceful oasis after the nightmare. Lena rushed into Evelyn's arms, giggling with her chubby cheeks, and my mother hugged her granddaughter, looking at us with worried eyes. "How did it go, son?" I recounted it briefly, avoiding the details of the venomous words at the funeral. Evelyn played with Lena all evening, but her eyes were distant, as if lost in memories. That night, we lay beside each other, Lena sleeping soundly in the crib next to the bed. "I've been thinking a lot about him," Evelyn whispered. Not anger, but emptiness. Like closing a book chapter without a happy ending. I held her closer. "We've already written our own happy ending. This family right here." She gave a faint smile, and we drifted off to sleep amid the pattering rain outside the window. In the days that followed, life gradually returned to its familiar rhythm. I went to work, editing manuscripts. Evelyn cared for Lena and began writing a journal, fragments of her journey from the deep forest to happiness. But the anxiety lingered. Would Genevieve and Chloe let it go? Would Thomas's estate drag us into the whirlwind? A week after the funeral, the surprise arrived in the form of a thick envelope from the law firm representing Thomas Cross's estate. I opened it in the kitchen under the warm yellow light while Evelyn was feeding Lena vegetable puree. The letter invited us, both Evelyn and me, to attend the final reading of the will in New York the following weekend. I was quite surprised to see my name included. Why me? I was just the son-in-law, an ordinary book editor in Seattle. "Look at this letter." I handed it to Evelyn. She skimmed it, her expression unchanged, then set it down like a worthless scrap of paper. "I don't want to go there," she said indifferently, her voice calm but resolute. "I don't need anything from him. He abandoned me long ago. A will or whatever won't change that." I understood her pain. Thomas had once treated her like a tool, forcing her to give up everything. Why accept anything from him now? But deep down, I sensed this wasn't just about money. I sat beside her, taking her hand. "I know you don't need the assets, but think about it. Going isn't for the money, but to know what he truly thought of you." In the hospital room, he was remorseful. The will might be his final words, a way to make amends. "If we don't go, you'll carry that regret forever." Evelyn was silent for a long time, watching Lena play with her spoon, then sighed. "You always know how to persuade me," she said with a faint smile. With that gentle advice, Evelyn finally nodded. "All right, we'll go, but just to close it, nothing more." I hugged her, but anxiety surged. New York awaited us again with Genevieve and Chloe. Would this reading be peaceful? Or a battle? We flew to New York once more, leaving Lena with my mother. The same old hotel, familiar streets, but the atmosphere heavier than ever. The law office was in central Manhattan, a gleaming glass high-rise under the autumn sun. We arrived early, but Genevieve and Chloe were already there, sitting in the waiting room with stone-cold faces. Their eyes were like daggers aimed at Evelyn and me, sharp, full of contempt and venom. Genevieve wore an elegant black suit, hair pinned high, looking at Evelyn like a beggar. Chloe, younger with dyed blonde hair, arms crossed, whispered something to her mother and smirked. "You're here? Must be really looking forward to it," Chloe said bluntly, her voice shrill. Evelyn didn't respond, just gripped my hand tighter. I stared straight at them. "We came because we were invited, nothing more." The waiting room air was suffocating, tension building like a ticking bomb. The lawyer, Mr. Henry Lawson, a middle-aged man with gold-rimmed glasses and a monotone voice, invited us into the conference room. Long wooden table, plush leather chairs. But the atmosphere grew extremely tense as he began reading the will. His voice rang clear, each word like nails being hammered. The last will and testament of Mr. Thomas Cross, dated October 15, 2025, duly notarized. He read the introductory clauses, then moved to the distribution. My heart raced as I heard my name. Lucas Bennett is granted full management and operational control of the Cross Group, including 55% of the company's shares for the reason. He has cared for Evelyn with complete devotion, becoming the pillar that allowed my daughter to live on. I trust that the company will thrive under his leadership. I froze, looking at Evelyn. Why me? The Cross Group was a billion-dollar empire with massive shares. I was just Evelyn's husband, an ordinary man. Genevieve and Chloe whispered, faces flushing red. Next was Evelyn's portion. Evelyn Cross inherits the majority of my personal assets, including real estate portfolios in Denver, Chicago, and Phoenix. Bank accounts valued at over $8 million US. Collections of antiques, supercars, yacht, and ownership rights to my unpublished memoir. Evelyn sat motionless, expression unchanged, but her hand trembled slightly under the table. And Genevieve and Chloe, they received only the remaining 15% shares in the Cross Group, 2 villas in Los Angeles, 2 Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars, and the old jewelry collection from Thomas's grandmother. That was all, a tiny fraction of the vast empire. Upon hearing it, their fury erupted like a volcano. Genevieve slammed the table with a resounding bang, standing abruptly, face purple with rage, her voice booming in outrage. This is a filthy farce, a ridiculous charade. How could he leave everything to that little brat? Evelyn, the parasite who came back to steal it all. She vanished for years, then shows up just in time to swallow the entire fortune. She pointed straight at me, nearly screaming. And you, some worthless husband with no place in this family, daring to sit here and claim control. The conference room froze. Chloe flushed, jumping up beside her mother, voice shrill with anger. Exactly. An outsider child remains an outsider forever. The old mistress now back as the successor's wife? How disgusting is that? This fortune was meant for my mother and me. She smirked, eyes fixed on Evelyn with utter contempt. You think you're worthy? After running away like a rat, hiding in the woods like a madwoman? Genevieve added, voice shaking with fury. I'll hire the best lawyers. I'll drag your entire past into the light. The suicide attempt, living in hiding in the forest like a lunatic. I'll prove you're unstable, unfit to inherit a single penny. Chloe gritted her teeth, hissing. You haven't won yet, Evelyn. Don't dream of living peacefully with what's rightfully ours. I'll make you lose everything. The room descended into chaos. The lawyer repeatedly called for order, but the shouting and venomous words echoed in the enclosed space like knife thrusts. I could bear it no longer. I stepped forward, positioning myself fully in front of Evelyn. My voice rang out, not loud, but strong enough to cut through the madness. What you're doing isn't defending Thomas Cross's honor, it's smearing it yourselves. Genevieve whipped around to me. I met her gaze without flinching. This will is Mr. Cross's final choice. It was made in sound mind, fully notarized. He decided this for his own reasons, not because he was deceived or coerced. I continued, voice lowering but even more resolute. If you believe you've been wronged, your only path is through the courts. But from now on, stop insulting my wife. Genevieve turned to the lawyer, nearly yelling. This is forgery. I'll sue. I'll take this to court and expose the true faces of these two hypocrites. Chloe glared at Evelyn, eyes devouring. You think you'll get away? I swear I won't let you rest. Amid that storm of words, Evelyn remained seated calmly. She didn't retort, didn't justify. Her gaze was steady on the lawyer, then she slowly stood. I took her hand. Evelyn just nodded faintly, as if those words no longer had the power to touch her. We turned and left the conference room, leaving behind the shouting, threats, and hatred. Things Evelyn no longer carried. We walked out with heads held high, leaving the screams and venomous glares of Genevieve and her daughter behind. On the way to the elevator, Evelyn whispered, "I'm fine," just surprised by what he left. We flew back to Seattle that very evening, not staying in New York a minute longer. Evelyn's mood after the reading wasn't joy or sorrow, just a sense of tranquility, as if she had finally stepped out from under the shadow of the past, no longer needing to evade or fear. "He left it to me, but I don't need it," she said on the plane. "It's his final apology." I held her. "We'll decide later. For now, let's go home to Mom and Lena." But anxiety surged. The lawsuits were coming and Genevieve wouldn't let it rest. A new storm was beginning. In the first days after returning to Seattle, everything seemed deceptively peaceful. We tried to slip back into our familiar routine, waking early to Lena's cries for milk, Evelyn brewing coffee in the kitchen, me sitting at the dining table reading the newspaper. Lena had now learned to roll over, and every time Evelyn gently tickled her tiny feet, the baby giggled delightedly. Those simple moments spread a quiet joy, like a healing balm that both mother and child needed. My mother visited more often, bringing homemade cakes or toys for her granddaughter, and she looked at Evelyn with gentle eyes. "Are you okay? Don't dwell on it too much." Evelyn nodded and smiled, but I noticed how she often gazed out the window, her eyes distant as if waiting for something. The will, with the cross group and millions of dollars, hung over us like a dark cloud. I wasn't a businessman, just a book editor. How could I manage an empire? But for Evelyn's sake, I would try. Anxiety seeped into every meal, every late night. Genevieve and Chloe wouldn't let it go. Then the storm hit, faster and fiercer than I had imagined. In the days following the will reading, the national media erupted. Major newspapers ran headlines in unison. Genevieve Cross and daughter Sue, secret daughter Evelyn Cross and husband in billion-dollar estate dispute. I read the first headline on my phone early one morning, my heart tightening. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, even CNN all covered it with photos of Evelyn and me leaving the law office, our faces enlarged, captioned, "Cross inheritance dispute, family feud, or theft plot." Evelyn was feeding Lena when she glanced at my screen, her face going pale. They really did it. I hugged her. "We'll handle it." But the anxiety surged. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a dirty war. Some tabloid sources, citing anonymous quotes, claimed Evelyn was a runaway who had eloped, had mental issues, and returned only to grab the inheritance. Fabricated stories were rolled out in waves. One day an article on Evelyn Cross's dark past, failed suicide and reclusive life. The next a podcast analyzing whether Evelyn manipulated her father to seize the assets. It was all orchestrated by Genevieve and Chloe hiring dirty PR, I was certain. They used money to buy articles, invent tales, even spread old photos of Evelyn, a blurry one from her youth captioned as rebellious princess or asset grabber. I read them shaking with anger, but Evelyn, she crumbled. Social media was manipulated into a frenzy. Facebook, Instagram, everywhere filled with vicious comments about Evelyn. Parasite. Ran off with some guy, now back to steal. Really has mental issues, look at her eyes. Her husband must be a gold digger managing Cross Group. Thousands of comments insulting her character, digging up and distorting her private life. Someone posted a photo of our apartment with a vague address and threats. "Everyone go visit the princess." Evelyn's phone rang incessantly with strange messages, emails full of curses. Evelyn collapsed in those early days. She withdrew, refusing to go outside, turning off her phone, sleepless for many nights. She sat in a corner of the sofa, holding Lena so tightly the baby cried, eyes red but shedding no tears aloud. "I can't take it, Lucas. They've turned me into a monster." Her voice broke and I saw her trembling like an autumn leaf. But I was always by her side, not loudly, not questioning, just holding her whenever she shook with fear. I turned off all notifications, locked the windows, cooked her favorites, warm chicken soup, toasted bread with honey. "We'll get through this, my love. They don't know how strong you are." Margaret quietly became a pillar, helping Evelyn through each crisis. She visited daily, bringing herbal tea, sitting with Evelyn for hours. "You're not alone. A real family never abandons each other." She shared old stories about my father, about the hardships she overcame, and Evelyn listened, gradually opening up. She whispered thanks, and my mother hugged her like her own daughter. Anxiety still rose. Lawyers called, preparing documents. But with that support, Evelyn slowly stood up again. She began reading books once more, playing with Lena, even smiling when Lena crawled clumsily. The trial officially took place after nearly 2 months. A long, grueling time of lawyer meetings, evidence preparation, and relentless media pursuit. The court was in New York. We flew there with luggage heavy with worry. Media swarmed the courthouse entrance, reporters crowding, camera flashes non-stop, malicious questions. "Mrs. Evelyn, are you an asset grabber? Mr. Bennett, are you ready to manage cross-group?" But Evelyn didn't answer, holding my hand, eyes resolute. "Let's go. I'm ready," she whispered. I was proud of her, from the woman hiding in the forest to here, facing the world. In court, our legal team was fully prepared, like an impenetrable steel wall. Mr. Henry Lawson led with legal evidence proving the will's validity, drafted and notarized months before Thomas's death when he was still lucid. "No signs of coercion or alteration," Mr. Lawson affirmed in court. Then the recording of Thomas's dying words from medical records, his voice weak but clear. "I trust Evelyn and Lucas. They deserve these things. Genevieve has received enough." The tape played in the courtroom, leaving Genevieve and Chloe silent, faces flushed. The opposing lawyers argued, the will was manipulated, Evelyn has mental issues. But our evidence was ironclad. Doctors confirmed Thomas's soundness of mind, no signs of forgery. The court ruled to dismiss all claims by Genevieve and Chloe while warning against slander and fabrication to manipulate public opinion. "Spreading false information is illegal," the judge said sternly. Evelyn and I officially won the case. The will was upheld, cross-group under my management, assets to Evelyn. Genevieve screamed in the courtroom, "It's unfair." Chloe sobbed, but they were escorted out. I hugged Evelyn, tears streaming with relief. "It's over, my love." She nodded, but her eyes remained distant. As we left the court, reporters surged like a tide, but this time no hostile glares, just respect, perhaps because the trial was live-streamed and the truth emerged. Some journalists called out, "Mrs. Evelyn, do you have anything to say? The truth is clear now." Evelyn didn't respond, just holding my hand and walking in silence. Her tears fell not from defeat, but because she no longer had to run from the past. We got in the car, left New York, and on the way to the airport, Evelyn whispered, "Finally, I'm free, Lucas. Nothing holds me back anymore." Mainstream media later issued corrections en masse, confirming prior false information was manipulated, and ran articles like, "Evelyn Cross, the forgotten daughter, the woman harmed by her own family." The New York Times published a long piece detailing Evelyn's journey from forced engagement to hiding, to victory in court. Social media shifted, comments supporting Evelyn. "Evelyn, you did nothing wrong. Genevieve is the one who should be condemned." Though vindicated, I knew Evelyn still carried wounds that wouldn't easily heal. Scars from betrayal, buried traumas over many years, and trust once suffocated to the point of breathlessness. She no longer collapsed as before, but I clearly felt those marks lingering silently, reminding us of the price she had paid to stand strong today. When the judgment took effect, the court dismissed all appeals from Genevieve and Chloe, forcing them to accept defeat. The assets were transferred exactly as stipulated in the will. Evelyn inherited the majority of the net worth, the real estate properties in Denver, Chicago, and Phoenix, over $8 million in cash. The collection of antiques, supercars, the East Coast yacht, and the rights to Thomas's unpublished memoir. As for me, Lucas Bennett, I officially became the managing representative of the Thomas Cross Group with 65% of the shares. It was a colossal empire, a multinational company spanning real estate to technology valued in the billions. I sat in a temporary office in New York staring at the towering stacks of documents, my heart pounding. In the initial weeks, we were swept into an administrative whirlwind, constant calls from lawyers, bank transfers, fluctuating stocks. Evelyn spoke less, often sitting alone with Lena watching our daughter play while her eyes reddened. "I don't want to keep them," she said one evening as we sat at the dinner table, Lena asleep in her room. "Those assets, they carry too much blood and tears. I don't need villas or yachts to be happy." I looked at her, my heart swelling with pride. We discussed it through the night under dim lights and reached a decision together. Sell off her entire inherited portion, including the historic New York villa with its rose garden, the chain of high-yield rental properties generating millions annually, and personal stocks in major investment funds. We kept only a small portion sufficient to build a new life and do something more meaningful. "We'll use that money to help others," Evelyn whispered. "Like your father helped me." I nodded and hugged her. "Exactly. Not to hoard wealth, but to truly live." That decision felt like lifting a boulder from our chests. After taxes and fees, we used part of it to buy a new, modern, cozy home in the Seattle suburbs. A 2-story wooden house with a small flower garden, sunlight flooding through large windows, and a view of a tranquil lake. "This is the first home we've truly chosen," Evelyn said as we moved in, her hand stroking the freshly painted white walls. No longer the cramped downtown apartment. Now there was ample space. Lena's bedroom with cloud-painted walls, a modern kitchen where my mother experimented with new baking recipes, and a backyard with a swing for our daughter. We unpacked over the weekend, laughing as Lena crawled clumsily across the floors and the lingering anxiety faded. This was our home, not a legacy from the past. I invited Margaret, my mother, to live with us, turning the house into a haven for 3 generations. She hesitated at first. "I don't want to burden you kids." But Evelyn persuaded her, "Your family. Please stay with us." She moved in, bringing mementos from the old house, photos of my father, an antique tea set, and her wonderful cooking skills. Lena's laughter echoed through the rooms, and occasionally cousins visited, the children of relatives running and playing in the backyard, making the house lively and warm. Everything gradually filled the voids that had once existed in Evelyn. But I still felt anxious about the Cross Group. I had to fly to New York monthly for meetings, wondering if I was doing it right. With 65% of the shares, I officially took over operational control of the Cross Group, but I viewed it only as a responsibility to fulfill, not a long-term path. After a few months stabilizing the structure, working with the management team, and ensuring transparent operations, I proactively stepped down from direct management. In parallel, I used my personal assets to establish a small independent publishing house, completely separate from the Cross Group, specializing in literature, memoirs, and inspirational books, particularly giving opportunities to authors who had faced prejudice or been marginalized by society. The publishing house was named Bennett Books, with a modest office in Seattle where I served as the chief editor. We published memoirs of women overcoming domestic violence, novels about refugees, children's books teaching tolerance. Sales weren't high, but each book released was a victory, and the anticipation of reader feedback made me feel more alive than ever. A few years later, when Lena was 3, a lively little girl with curly hair and her mother's smile, we established a charity foundation named after my father, the Harold Bennett Foundation. The foundation focused on supporting orphans and women traumatized by domestic violence or forced marriages. Evelyn directly managed it, selecting programs, flying to shelters, meeting victims, allocating funds from the sold inheritance. "I want to help them the way your father helped me," she said. We funded safe houses, scholarships for children, counseling programs. Each time Evelyn returned from a trip, her eyes sparkled. "Today I met a girl just like I was back then. Now she'll have a chance." I was proud but anxious about the responsibility. The foundation was large, but we handled it carefully and transparently. Life flowed on quietly, without fanfare or luxury. We didn't buy luxury cars or travel Europe. Instead, early morning jogs around the lake, picnic lunches in the backyard, evenings on the porch listening to my mother tell old stories. Every day brought birdsong on the balcony, the aroma of baking from mother's kitchen, the peaceful gaze of the woman I loved, me, and the serenity Evelyn once thought she would never have in her lifetime. Lena grew up starting preschool, and we had another child, a boy named Ethan, 2 years later. The house was filled with children's laughter, and Evelyn often said, "This is a dream I never dared to dream." But sometimes anxiety returned. An old article about the lawsuit, a call from the cross group, reminding us of the journey we had endured, the message life taught us that we want to share with you. Happiness doesn't lie in the inheritance left behind, but in how we choose to use it. Evelyn and I didn't keep the assets to a firm status. We used them to build a home, nurture family bonds, and give opportunities to others. We turned a bitter ending, the death of Thomas, the vicious lawsuit, into a compassionate new beginning, with the charity foundation and publishing house helping hundreds. The deepest lesson I drew: we cannot change the past, but we always have the right to choose how to move forward. Evelyn was deeply wounded by her own family, by fame, ambition, and the betrayal of Thomas, Genevieve, and Chloe. Yet instead of harboring hatred, she chose forgiveness, not to forget everything, but to free herself. "Forgiving helped me live again," she once said on a quiet afternoon as we sat by the lake watching the sunset. The advice I take from my life story: don't let resentment make you forget those still by your side. In the days when Evelyn was cornered, slandered in the media, dragged into court, my mother and I quietly protected her, holding her through long nights, caring for Lena so she could rest, reminding her of her inner strength. Life always has people worth keeping, and true happiness sometimes comes from that silent presence. Like my mother knitting sweaters for the grandchildren, or Lena wrapping her arms around her mother's neck with a beaming smile. Our story closes with a family photo. No more venomous words, no shadows of the past, just us sitting together on the porch, smiling on a peaceful afternoon. Golden sunset light bathed us. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the garden, and I thought, this is the most beautiful ending after all the storms.